It is a chapter of our story we have chosen to forget. We exist today within a fortress of our own making, sheltered by walls, secured by locks, connected by invisible signals. We feel untouchable. But for the vast majority of our time on this planet, for hundreds of thousands of years, we had none of it. No walls, no medicine, no security. The simple, brutal truth is that for millennia, man was not the apex predator. He was the hunted. To understand this, we must journey back, tens of thousands of years into the past. This was the time of Homo sapiens, a human modern in form, yet forged for a different existence. He was more robust, a frame dense with muscle, with powerful shoulders and hands hardened by relentless use. The face might have been more pronounced, the jaw and cheekbones prominent, the teeth ground down by a diet of grit and necessity. This was a body engineered to endure, to react, not to rest. Imagine yourself there, not in the sterile comfort of a museum, but in the reality of it. Europe is in the grip of a glacial age. This is not the lush, green world we know. It is a landscape that is cold, barren, and unforgiving. Trees exist, but they offer little sanctuary. Snow blankets the ground for months on end. The wind is a constant predator, a physical presence that never truly ceases. The earth itself is a treacherous slurry of frozen mud, each step a calculated expense of precious energy. In our time, a moment of cold is an inconvenience, remedied by returning home. But here, there is no home to return to. To be wet is to remain wet. To be cold is to carry that cold deep in your bones for hours, perhaps days. And this cold is not merely discomfort. It is a slow poison, leaching strength, dulling the senses, making you slow. And in this world, the slow are the first to be taken. Across this landscape moves a small band, no more than 20 or 30 souls. They are a family, a clan, bound by necessity. A child is held close, a shield against the biting air. Someone drags an animal hide, a makeshift blanket. Another limps, a wound to the leg hampering their pace, but they must walk. They all must walk. To stop in the wrong place is to risk everything. Their day is a continuous, desperate search. With the first pale light, they move. They cannot afford the stillness we cherish, for to be still is to consume energy without reward. They seek water that is not solid ice, sometimes having to shatter the frost. Even this gift is a threat. A slip on the slick banks, a plunge into the frigid liquid, is a potential death sentence. They search for dry wood. In this damp, frozen world, it is a form of gold. It is heat. It is light against the consuming darkness. It is a flickering barrier against things that hunt in the night. It must be scavenged from beneath fallen trunks, stripped from the leeward side of dead trees. It is heavy, a burden to be carried, because to arrive at dusk with empty hands is unthinkable. And then there is the most vital and dangerous quest of all, the search for food. This was the rhythm of life, a daily battle waged not for power or for glory, but for the simple privilege of seeing another sunrise. Every calorie sought, every risk calculated, was a thread in the tapestry of our own improbable existence. We live today within the fortress they built with their resilience and their suffering. A fortress so vast, we have forgotten the wilderness that lies just beyond the walls, and the echoes of the hunt that still reside deep within our bones. It is a phantom, an elusive promise that is never there when you need it, never where you seek it. There are days spent walking for hours, the world a vast, empty canvas. You see nothing but the ghosts of a presence, tracks pressed into the snow, the faint signature of a hoof in the mud, a single strand of fur snagged on a thorn, the stark white architecture of bones already picked clean by other, more successful hunters. Sometimes a flicker of movement in the distance quickens the pulse. A potential prey, a promise of sustenance. But it is always too far, a fleeting shape that vanishes into the tree line before a proper pursuit can begin. At other times, ting, the scent to go cold. You stand, listening to your own breathing, realizing you have only squandered the very strength you were trying to replenish. But when the hunt succeeds, the world is remade. The weight of a kill changes everything. Meat is not merely food, it is the fuel for the furnace of life. It is energy and force. It is a bulwark against the gnawing cold, the vital resource needed to rise the next day and walk again. It is the difference between endurance and collapse. When the hunt fails, the return is a silent march of defeat. You carry nothing but the weight of your own fatigue. The cold bites deeper, for there is no inner fire to fight it. The exhaustion is profound, and in this world, exhaustion is a predator in itself. It is a subtle poison that slows the mind and dulls the senses. A moment's inattention, a misplaced foot on a loose rock. These are the seeds of disaster. Here, an error is not paid for with a bad day or a minor injury. It is paid for with life itself. As the afternoon wanes, the light begins to bleed from the sky. The sun, a fleeting visitor, makes its rapid descent. This is the most perilous hour, a treacherous, liminal space that is not yet night, but no longer day. Vision blurs in the failing twilight. The eyes, strained from hours of scanning the horizon, begin to deceive. The body, already a vessel of fatigue, is at its most vulnerable. It is in this grey margin of existence that the unseen can strike. The group comes to a halt, not from a decision, but from a command issued by the body and the dying light. And here, the first critical choice must be made: where to endure the night. They do not seek a place of beauty or comfort. They seek a place that will not betray them. A position slightly elevated, offering a view of the surrounding terrain. A solid wall of rock to guard their backs, eliminating one direction from which an attack might come. A defensible space where they cannot be easily encircled, where they can control at least two approaches. Then comes the second choice, the one upon which everything hinges: fire. Today, fire is a triviality, summoned with the flick of a thumb, the strike of a match. Then it was a battle. It demanded the raw strength of arms, the patient friction of wood on wood. It demanded a desperate search for tinder, dry as dust, and wood that had shed all moisture. It demanded skill to shield the fragile, nascent flame from the wind, to coax a fragile ember into a living blaze. And the very act of its creation is a paradox. The noise of the work, the scraping and the striking, is a summons, a broadcast into the wilderness that you are here. It attracts attention, but the silence without it is a far greater invitation to the things that hunt in the dark. For fire is never just warmth. It is light. It is a weapon. It is a perimeter of order carved into the heart of chaos. The people arrange themselves around its glow. The children, the future of the clan, are placed at the very core, shielded from the cold and the darkness. The adults form a ring around them, a living fortress of flesh and bone. This is not a gesture of sentiment or romance. It is a calculated defense, and throughout the long hours, someone always remains awake. The fire must be fed, its power maintained. To allow everyone to sleep at once would be to switch off the senses of the tribe, to become blind and deaf to the encroaching world. This was not a fear born solely of glacial winds in an ice-locked Europe. In other warmer parts of the world, where the night fell with the same finality, early man was just as vulnerable. When the last vestiges of light vanish and total darkness descends, the world is fundamentally altered. Vision, the most trusted of human senses, is rendered useless, a liability. You cannot see what is around you. you cannot comprehend the space you occupy. And so, other senses ascend. Hearing becomes painfully acute. Every sound is magnified, dissected by a mind primed for threat. A twig snapping under an unseen weight, the rustle of leaves that is not the wind, a distant footfall. In the profound silence, the brain begins the work it has perfected over thousands upon thousands of years of survival. It begins to imagine the worst in order to prepare for it, a primal, cognitive echo chamber where every shadow holds a predator, and the deepest fear is not of the monsters outside, but of the moment the light finally dies. Somewhere in the impenetrable dark, a presence stirs. It is a pack, moving as a single fluid shadow. You do not see them, you feel them. At times the warning is a distant howl, a lonely note that hangs in the cold air, mapping the vast and hostile emptiness. But more often, the herald of their approach is silence, a profound and unnatural stillness that suffocates the night. It is a silence pregnant with intent, for when the apex predator draws near, the world holds its breath. The birdsong ceases, the nocturnal chorus of insects falls mute. The wind itself seems to carry a new weight, and the darkness presses closer, as if it too is an accomplice. These are not the monsters of folklore. They are a council of shadows, governed by an ancient and profound intelligence. Their hunt begins not with the claw, but the story of the small firelight ahead, trying to understand, is this a strong tribe or a weak one? Their senses probe for the subtle tells, the scent of a festering wound, the faltering rhythm of a dying fire, the nervous energy of a group on the edge. They are watching for the one who strays, the one who is isolated. This is a crucial distinction. Many imagine the predator as a relentless engine of assault, throwing itself against its prey without pause. The reality is far more strategic. They wait, they study, they conserve their energy, for an attack is a risk for them as well. A desperate defense can leave a hunter maimed, unable to provide for the pack, a death sentence in itself. But when they perceive an easy opportunity, a lapse in the fortress of the group, they do not forgive. A man rises. He steps away from the circle of firelight, just a few paces, answering a simple human call. It is a mundane act, a moment of privacy in a world that offers none. And it is in these mundane moments that tragedies are born. The pack does not need to launch a full-scale war against the entire group. It needs only a second of isolation, a single thread pulled from the tapestry. In this world, a single second is an eternity, long enough for the darkness to claim its own. Yet the fangs of the wild are not the only executioners. There is an enemy far simpler, and in its own way, more cruel. It is the wound, a simple cut from a sharp stone, a twisted ankle on uneven ground, a thorn that has broken off deep beneath the skin. Today, a triviality, cleaned and forgotten. Then it was a seed of destruction. It could blossom into the searing bloom of fever. It could weep with the poison of infection. It could render a limb useless, transforming a vital member of the tribe into a liability. And if you cannot walk, you slow everyone. If you slow everyone, you endanger everyone. Herein lies the terrible arithmetic of survival, the constant, agonizing balance between mutual aid and self-preservation. This is the harsh, unspoken truth of the tribe. There were moments when the group had to choose, not from a place of malice, but because the unforgiving logic of nature forces such choices. How then did humanity endure? How did this fragile species, so vulnerable to the tooth and the thorn, not simply vanish into the long night? It achieved something that seems obvious, yet is the most profound innovation in the history of life. It learned to become a true group, not merely a collection of individuals standing near one another for warmth, but a single, coordinated organism. As dawn breaks, Not as a promise, but as a reprieve, the tribe moves again. Their movement is not random, it is a living formation. The strongest do not lead from the front, they guard the vulnerable flanks. The young and the old, the lifeblood and the memory of the tribe, are sheltered in the center. Those with the most experience are not looking at the horizon, their eyes are fixed upon the earth. They are not guided by mere instinct, but by a library of knowledge paid for in generations of blood. They are deciphering a language older than words. A footprint in the mud tells the weight and speed of its owner. Freshly crushed grass holds the ghost of a body's warmth. A snapped twig is a shout in the silence. A turned stone whispers of a recent passage. Gnawed bones reveal the local predators and their prey. Still moist excrement is a clock, marking how far ahead the danger, or the meal, might be. An unfamiliar odor on the air, a path that has fallen too quiet, a narrow pass with no escape route. Each is a word, a sentence, a warning. And through this, the ultimate lesson is learned. The animal is not the only hunter. The land itself can kill. A narrow gorge becomes a stone jaw waiting to snap shut. A dense forest is a tapestry of shadow and ambush. Soft ground near a water source is a patient, suffocating maw. And a wide open plain, devoid of shelter, is a stage for slaughter, leaving the tribe exposed to the merciless sky and all that moves beneath it. It was a world of constant, unrelenting pressure, a crucible of fear that sharpened the senses and forged the bonds of the tribe. Then something new appeared, a thought given form, a stone shaped by a hand. The first tools arrived. In the beginning, there are stones. There are sticks. There are the razor-sharp fragments of flint fractured by a deliberate hand. These are not yet the instruments of war between men, but the first whispers of advantage in a world that offers none. They are born from a single, inviolable rule of existence. A human being cannot afford to fight a predator hand to hand. Distance must be kept. From this brutal necessity, the spear is born. Even a simple, fire-hardened point changes the calculus of survival. It does not grant invincibility, it grants a chance. It is the ability to strike before being struck, to fend off a charge, to form a bristling wall against the coming dark. It is the first physical manifestation of foresight. Then comes the second, and perhaps more potent weapon: sound and solidarity. A rustle in the undergrowth, a shadow shifting at the edge of the firelight. The group senses movement nearby. They do not scatter in a panic of isolated prey. They contract. They tighten into a dense, defiant core, raising torches that spit embers into the night. They scream as one. They beat stones together, a discordant thunder that rips through tin. It is strategy. Most predators are engineered to hunt the isolated, the weak, the straggler. When faced with a collective that appears large, coordinated, and ready to retaliate, they often hesitate. That hesitation is time, and time is life. Here, a slow but monumental transformation begins. Humanity starts to do something that predators do not in the same deliberate way. It begins to plan. The wolf hunts the opportunity it finds. The human begins to manufacture the opportunity. The hunt is not a heroic chase, it is a grim ballet of organization. Some act as beaters, pushing the panicked prey towards a prearranged point. Others lie in wait, silent and still in ambush. Still others move to close off the routes of escape, a living net closing a trap of terrain and terror. Success is never guaranteed. Sometimes the plan collapses, and the hunt ends in injury or death. Sometimes the group returns to the cave empty-handed, the gnawing hunger a stark reminder of their fragility. But every attempt, successful or not, leaves a residue. It leaves a lesson. And from the ashes of these failures, the most critical tool is forged. communication. Not in elaborate speeches, but in the silent, urgent language of survival. A hand signal, a single guttural word, a shared glance across a ravine that means simply, now. When a human group achieves this level of understanding, it becomes a new kind of animal. Not because it is stronger, but because it moves with a collective mind, a superorganism acting with a single distributed consciousness. Slowly, painstakingly, through generations of trial and error, the equilibrium of the natural world begins to shift. This does not mean the predators vanish. It does not mean the fear ends. Fear remains. It must. It is the sentinel that keeps the species alive. But humanity's position changes. It is no longer only that which flees, it becomes that which resists, that which defends, that which decides. Picture a scene etched in frost. One morning, the tribe finds fresh tracks in the snow, the deep impressions of a great predator. A lifetime ago, such a sign would have been a command to change course immediately, to retreat, to avoid any and all risk. Now, something different happens. They stop, they look, they understand the direction of travel, they assess the distance, they draw together, preparing themselves. Not because they have become fearless, but because they now possess tools, fire, the hard-won currency of experience, and above all, a profound and tested trust in one another. They have learned the fundamental lesson of not being alone. Humanity did not ascend through the brute force of fang and claw. It became dominant through the mastery of three simple yet revolutionary concepts: the group, the flame, and the plan. For an age, we were vulnerable prey in a world of giants. We survived and eventually thrived because we learned to stand together, to guard the long night with a shared fire, and to understand that our greatest strength was never in the individual, but in the intricate, unspoken web that bound us all. To think one step ahead of the peril, to see the predator not just in the flesh, but in the shadow it might cast, in the silence it might leave behind. It was from this relentless daily struggle, a crucible forged from two opposing forces, raw fear and the nascent power of choice, that the architecture of the modern mind was born. This is the inheritance of our species, a consciousness defined not by peace, but by the perpetual negotiation between what we dread and what we decide.